Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Tennessee on the road playing Vanderbilt. I don't think there was a bigger winner on Saturday than Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Vols. And I'm not talking about the 56-0 win against UTEP. I'm talking about Tennessee college football playoff implications, kind of, on the outside looking in after that loss against Georgia. I don't think you could have asked for a better Saturday if you're a Tennessee fan. Not only do they seem like they're in a spot where if they just win this football game, they're going to the college football playoffs. If they send a message in this football game and win it comfortably, I think you're looking at a strong argument for Tennessee to be hosting a college football playoff game over the next couple of weeks. Ole Miss loses, Alabama loses, Indiana gets beat badly by Ohio State. If you're a Tennessee fan, yeah, it's a win in your in situation. But I think more importantly, you want to go out there and play some really good football. So that first college football playoff game is being played in Neyland Stadium. Now you look at Vanderbilt. This is not the classic we'll check the score at the end of the game type thing. This is a Vanderbilt team that has been very tricky for a lot of teams in the SEC. Going to get into kind of a few intriguing matchups that we're going to see in this football game. Now, before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. I went to Vanderbilt for graduate school. I know there's going to be a lot of Vanderbilt people where they're looking at this football game and say, hey, I want to play a little bit of a spoiler against Tennessee. So let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Let's start with this Tennessee offense that, I'll be quite frank, I didn't have the Tennessee UTEP game up on the screen on Saturday, but I went back and watched it in that first quarter. It was kind of sloppy out of Tennessee and the offensive side of the football. Now, I think what's intriguing about Tennessee is I do think there was a lot of confidence builders in that second and third quarter. That Tennessee offense really started to turn it up, and that's one of the biggest conversations we've been having with Nico and this Tennessee offense is, look, on paper, they ain't no question marks about the talent that Tennessee has. It's about, hey, can they consistently start playing their best football? And again, it's against UTEP. You don't want to buy too much stock into that performance. But from a confidence standpoint, it was nice to see Nico really start to turn it on kind of later in that football game. If you get a confident Nico going into this football game in the college football playoffs, I think it puts you in a really good spot to be one of the most dangerous teams in the country. And quite frankly, it's kind of what we said. Tennessee hasn't always played like one of the best teams in the country, but when we see them play their best football, I think they're made up of a roster that can be one of the best teams in the country any given Saturday. That's kind of why I want to see them get into the college football playoffs. Now, what does Tennessee look to do against Vanderbilt? I think the thing that jumps out to you the most is this Vanderbilt secondary is not very good. They're allowing a 68% completion percentage. That's 130th in the country, 8.2 yards per pass attempt. That's 110th. Like this secondary gives you a lot of space, gives you a lot of throwing windows. And what I'm looking for here is Nico just operating the offense. Like there are going to be plenty of throws for you to make, especially in the short underneath stuff. Vanderbilt kind of plays that bend but don't break. We're going to try to prevent the big play, but we're going to give you some stuff underneath. Can Nico just go out there and execute? Along with these wide receivers, I think a lot of the conversation is Nico and the inconsistencies we've seen from him. I think a lot of Tennessee fans probably understand, hey, these pass catchers got to go start making some plays for Nico as well. So I think you're looking for just execution. If you can execute in this passing attack, I don't think Vanderbilt has the guys to really give you some problems. But what I'm looking for from Tennessee is I lean on this run game as well, especially going on the road in an environment that there's going to be a lot of Vol fans there, but it's going to be a rowdy environment down there in Nashville. I think you can turn this game into a little bit of a roster game, so to speak. Like this offensive line is just big, strong, physical versus a Vanderbilt defensive line that, just from a physicality standpoint, I don't think they have the dudes to really win at the point of attack. So I think Tennessee at the very least, can really get that ground game going against Vanderbilt. And then can you supplement that with some consistency and execution in the passing attack? Vanderbilt's not going to ask you to make these highlight throws. They're going to give you the throws. Now you just got to go execute. And yards after the catch is going to be something I'm looking at. At times with Nico struggling with the ball placement, there's been times where he hasn't given his pass catchers the best opportunities to run after the catch. If he can be accurate, put it on the frame and let these Tennessee wide receivers give him some juice after the catch. That's another thing you're looking at. Now, flipping the sides, this Vanderbilt offense is very, very tricky. They have some difference makers, right? It starts with Diego Pavia, but Eli Stowers at that tight end position. That's a dude that's going to be playing on Sundays next year, but it's a lot more reliant on scheme. They're going to give you a lot of different looks. If there's one key in this football game on this side of the football, it's how well can Vanderbilt stay on schedule. And this is a very good third down offense. They're a good third down offense because they don't take a lot of negative plays. If you're Tennessee, can we continue to get back to that front seven that's just swallowing up front? That was arguably the most disappointing aspect of that Georgia game. Was I got up there, was running my mouth that I thought Tennessee's defensive line, specifically the front seven, was going to dominate Georgia. Kind of like we saw Georgia get dominated against Ole Miss and 0 sacks, only 2 tackles for loss, largely a non-factor in that football game. I know it's against UTEP, but it's nice to see them get back to 4 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, really starting to penetrate and create those negative plays. That's going to be the most important stat when you're playing Vanderbilt. Because if there's one thing Vanderbilt does not want to do, they don't want to be in those third and long situations. They want to keep that full playbook open and kind of be in those 3rd and 3 situations where they have the ability to run the football, to throw the football, to move the pocket. If you're Tennessee, you want to make sure you're creating those negative plays on 1st and 2nd down to really back Vanderbilt up and, put them in positions on offense where they're not all that comfortable operating. And if you're Vanderbilt, you're doing everything you can to move the pocket because this Tennessee front seven, specifically the defensive line, is very good. I think that's a matchup that favors Tennessee in this football game. You don't want Diego Pavia sitting there in the pocket. You want to get him outside. You want to let him use his athleticism and kind of stress this Tennessee defense from that way. The last thing you're probably looking at here is discipline. You look at Vanderbilt's offense and say, again, they have some difference makers, but a lot of the offensive production that Vanderbilt has had has come off, I wouldn't say trick plays, but kind of dialing up some scheme. And so if you're Tennessee, make sure no Vanderbilt. Hey, you look at Vanderbilt's offense, they want to run the football. Probably should have started with this. They run the football 58% of the time. That's top 25 in the country. Now, when they throw the football, they kind of do 2 different things. One, they'll kind of get it to the perimeter or they'll push it down the field. And they like to give you some eye candy, get those linebackers and safeties with their eyes in the backfield. And then they like to push the ball over the top. If you're Tennessee, just don't give them anything free. Don't let some of that scheme really wreak havoc on you. And I think, this being the last week of the season, there's a lot of film out on this Vanderbilt offense. I think this Vanderbilt team in general surprised a lot of people early in the season, especially with the kind of dynamic offense they ran. And I think there was just a lot of teams early on in the season, I think most notably a team like Alabama, that just wasn't ready for some of the looks, personnel packages, and plays that Vanderbilt like to go to. I think you've seen this offense, struggle a little bit more as there's been more film out on this Vanderbilt offense, which I think favors Tennessee. You get into the pick here. I think I really do like Tennessee to cover 2 touchdowns here. The line's sitting at 11.5 points. It's when I look at this matchup, there's 2 things that stand out. One, it's really hard for me to see Vanderbilt dealing with this Tennessee rushing attack. I just think there's a big difference in terms of the kind of bodies that Tennessee has on the offensive line versus Vanderbilt. And I think secondly, you look at Tennessee's front seven, I think they're built for kind of stopping and giving Vanderbilt some problems because they can create a ton of negative plays, right? Where you're talking about Thomas, Norman Lott, James Pierce, they got dudes that can create negative plays, put Vanderbilt in those positions that they just don't want to operate from. I think a very good example, South Carolina, another really good front seven that was able to create a lot of negative plays and keep Vanderbilt, kind of off schedule on offense. And you saw them struggle to kind of get that offense going. I think Tennessee can pose very similar problems in that front seven that South Carolina did. So a combination of, I think Tennessee's going to get the ground game going. And I think that this Tennessee front seven, in terms of how dominant at times we've seen them be, I think that's going to give Vanderbilt a lot of problems. And again, I think last week of the season, season, film out on Vanderbilt and what they want to do, you're probably going to see a pretty dang prepared Tennessee team. And there's no look ahead game, right? You just, hey, we take care of business in this football game, we're going to the college football playoffs. And if we take care of business in a big way and go win by 21 points, we're probably hosting that first college football playoff game. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Give me Tennessee to cover the 11.5 points. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.